Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about converting fractions, decimals, and percents. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back and forth between those three different things. And if you read through what this says here, you've seen fractions many times, especially when you get grades. But what happens is the fraction gets converted into a decimal, and then it turns into a percent, and it all happens behind the scenes, so you don't see what's going on. In this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to convert fractions, decimals, and percents so you know what's going on behind the scenes when you get a grade of some sort. So the first thing we want to talk about is how to take a percent and turn it into a decimal. And with everything that we do today, it's all going to be about moving the decimal point. And in the case of converting a percent into a decimal, we want to move the decimal point back 2 spaces. And so when it says back, what we mean is we're going to move the decimal to the left. So we're going to move it that direction. Okay, so if we take a look at this first example here, we have 67%. And so if we want to turn 67% into a decimal, we need to first realize that there is a decimal right there next to the 7. And we're going to move it 2 spots back or to the left. So this is going to move here and then here. So it becomes 0.67. I'm going to make my pen a little smaller. That's kind of annoying. Okay, so if we do the same thing with 30, and hopefully you'll just get into the habit of looking at this and saying, if there's 2 numbers there, it just moves to all the way to the left. So the decimal is right here, so it moves to there, and it becomes 0.30. Okay, notice how I'm putting a 0 in front. We like to put a 0 in front because sometimes that decimal can kind of look like just a stray little mark. And if we have that 0 there, we know that there is a decimal there. So in this case, the decimal is already there for us because we have 3 numbers. And don't let the 3 numbers confuse you. We're still just going to take that decimal and move it 2 spots back. So it becomes 0.995. Okay, and then this one, there's only one number. So if there's only one number, what I want you to get in the habit of doing, or if there's only one number to the left of the decimal, I should say, what I want you to get into the habit of doing is adding a 0. Because that decimal is right there, and we need something as a placeholder to be able to move that decimal past. So in this case, we have that 0 there. So, and this is one where people really get confused. They look at this and they don't move the decimal far enough. So what we want to do is make sure we move it 2 places, and when we do, we're going to have 0.08. So this one is the trickiest of the bunch, and if you can master this one, you'll be perfectly fine. All right, so you have a bunch of red boxes there. So do the ones in the red boxes, the 5 in the red boxes, and when you're done with this assignment, you'll enter those answers into Schoology. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is converting decimals to percent. So just the opposite of what we just did. So we're going to go backwards. We're going to do the opposite of what we just did. So to convert a decimal into a percent, we just move the decimal forward 2 spaces. So when we say forward, we mean to the right. Okay, so if we look at the first, well, why can't I do that? Look at the first example here. We have 0.39. So we're going to move the decimal to the right, and we're going to move it 2 places. So this becomes 39%. Okay, similarly, we have 0.02. We move it 2 places. Now, this one would become 0.02%, but we don't like to write that 0, so we can just get rid of that 0, and we can call it, well, I got rid of everything. Well, I don't want that. There we go. We can just call it 2%. Okay, this is similar to the last one we did up above because we need to add a number to this. We need to add a 0 next to the 9 because when we move that decimal 2 places, we need to have a placeholder of some sort there that's going to allow us to move the decimal 2 places. And so this becomes 90%. And then we need to do one more. Oh no, two more. So this one we have a bunch of numbers. We have 2 zeros and 2 sevens, but we're still just going to move that decimal 2 spots. So it's going to end up between the 2 sevens. So we end up with 7.7%. Okay, notice how the zeros all kind of disappear. And then the last one, move it 2 places. So this one becomes 116%. All right, your turn. There's 5 more for you to do. So do those 5 at the end of the assignment. Make sure you get those put into Schoology. And when you're ready, keep going. All right, the next thing we want to talk about is fractions. Everybody's favorite thing, fractions. So we're going to take fractions and we're going to convert them to percents. So this is where we combine everything into one. We're going to convert a fraction to a percent, and then a percent, or sorry, we're going to convert a fraction into a decimal, and then a decimal into a percent. So we have to grab a calculator for these because we need to do a little division. So if we look at this first example, we have 20 divided by 22. And if we type that into a calculator, 20 divided by 22 ends up being 0.9090. And that just keeps going. The 90 keeps going. So what we want to do is then convert that into a percent. So we're going to move that decimal forward 2 places. And it's going to end up right there. So we have 90.9%. And I'm going to leave it like that. I suppose I could round this and call it 91%, but I like the precision of 90.9%. Okay. All right, let's keep going. 30 divided by 50. Now this one, I don't know, some people might be able to do this without a calculator, but if you need a calculator, that's okay. So 30 divided by 50 is 0.6. And remember, anytime we have just one number to the right of the decimal, let's add a 0. Because when we move that decimal forward 2 places, it becomes 60%. Don't let the big numbers scare you. Calculator can handle it. You might be able to do it too. 1,800 divided by 2,150. Oh boy, let's move this over. So this one ends up with, oops, let me be consistent on my colors here. This one ends up being kind of a crazy number. 837,209. And then it just keeps going. There's more and more. But I don't need to go very far at all because we're going to turn this into a percent, and I'm going to move that decimal 2 places, so it's going to end up right there. So I end up with 83.7209. And this one, I'm going to want to round this one because I don't like to have a huge decimal like that. And the thing that I would focus on when I round this is let's always go to the 10th, I guess. So, oh, actually, you know what? What's it say down here? Round your answer. So there's one number after the decimal point. All right, so yeah, the 10th is one number after the decimal point. So we're going to round this until we get to that 7. And in this case, since the next number after the 7 is a 2, that means the 7 is going to stay the same. If that 2 were a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we would want to increase that 7 to an 8 or round it up. all right? But in this case, since it's a 2, we're just going to leave it as a 7, so the answer is 83.7%. All right, you have 4 to do, only 4. And again, it says round your answer so there is one number after the decimal point. So that's what we did in that. Oh, wait a minute. We have another example to do. Let's go back up and do that example. I missed it. But anyway, remember to round your answer to one number after the decimal point. Okay, so this one, 3 over 200, 3 200ths. And if we do the division on this, we get 0.015. And if we move that decimal 2 places forward, it ends up between the 1 and the 5. So we have 1.5%. And one thing to think about is that makes sense, right? 3 is really small compared to 200. So it's going to be a really small percent. So that's one thing that you can do with all these answers is look at them and say, well, how does the number compare? And does this percent make sense? All right. Now you can do these last 4 on your own. And make sure you round your answers so there's one number after the decimal point, like we did in all these.